Okay, match number 2 with Blue-Black Delver. We're on the draw. Our hand is fine. It's certainly not exciting. We have no black source. And we have a Gush, which we don't want until later. But these two Ponders will be able to find us whatever we need, most likely. We're up against Affinity. And they lead with a Flare Husk. And a third Ponder. Not what I was hoping to draw. So I think I'm going to shuffle pretty aggressively here. I need something very specific. So Gurmag Angler is quite good against Affinity, but this is not what I wanted there. I would have had to draw another land, which I did not want. And it's going to be a little while before I can play the Angler anyway with no Thought Scours in hand. Alright, our opponent plays a Prophetic Prism. This turn we're probably going to play Ponder and disfigure something. Take another one from the husk. Or rather, our first one from the husk. Delver of Secrets. Well, that's not bad. Our opponent does have Prism, so they have access to red mana to take it out. But I think I want to do that. The next question is whether we want to disfigure the Frogmite. And I think I would rather Ponder to make sure this Delver flips. Okay, Scavenger, Brainstorm, Edict. What order do I want to draw these in? I think I want to do it like this. Brainstorm last, then Scavenger, then Edict. And you know what I just realized? I messed this up again. Yeah, this is horrible. Now I'm forced to shuffle, because I didn't know what I was doing. Alright. So I need to pay closer attention to how I play these Delver Secrets. I did have quite a few practice matches that I went through. However, I need to remember that whatever card that I want to put on top for Delver goes in the middle of the pile. And there I accidentally put the creature in the middle, so I just went ahead and shuffled. Here we're going to put a thought stop on our upkeep. And the reason for this is if our Delver of Secrets reveals something that we don't want, we can Thought Scour off the top of our library with this card. We're not going to be trading here with a Germ. Alright, and our opponent has a Carapace Forger. See what we reveal to this Delver. Sultai Scavenger. Well, I don't want to reveal it. The question is, do I want to draw it? Yeah, I think that's fine to draw. Now we can Ponder, then Thought Scour, and then play Angler. So I can take just one of these cards if I want to. And I think the card that I'm going to take is Ponder. So I can find some more removal. Get rid of the other two. And play a Scavenger to block. And pass the turn. So our opponent gets to untap with a better board state than us, and the same number of cards in hand. We have no counter magic for the eventual Atog plus Flame combo. A Thought Cast puts them even farther ahead. Let's see what they can do to us this turn. Alright, they get to blast the Scavenger away. And do I need to trade with this Germ? I think I'm getting to the point that I probably need to. Even if I flip it, I can't really attack with it. I'm going to have to leave it back to block a Frogmite anyway. And if this figure is taking down a Frogmite, then I'd rather just trade the Delver with the Germ right now. I can also chump block to gain a little bit more life, but this makes my Edict better if I end up drawing it. Another Frog. A Star. And another Husk. So our opponent has two activations of Flare Husk available, so they can pump up that Carapace Forger all the way to a 6/6 if they wanted to. Stormbound Geist does not block anything, so I'm going to Ponder and look for another creature. Preferably an Angler. Delver of Secrets. That's not quite good enough, so I think I'm going to shuffle these away. I really need to find an Angler. Agony Warp is also a fine draw. So I will be able to give -3/-0 to the Forger and kill the Frogmite, and only take 4 damage this turn. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. We fall down to 6. Our opponent cracks their star. Plays another creature. And Atog. So the Atog is obviously the scariest thing, even if our opponent does not have a fling. Doomblade. So we can Doomblade the Atog right now, and then still die. So I think we're going to have to use the alternate casting cost of Gush. And see if we can't find some other stuff. Perhaps a black source? Okay. Agony Warp. So there's no way that we can win here. I'm just going to pass the turn and see what our opponent does if they want to show us some additional cards. So far it looks like they could be playing the exact version or very close to the version that we played before, so we should know their list. We could remove one of these and we're still taking 6, so we're not going to. Okay, and game 1 goes to them, and we'll see how we sideboard against Affinity. So against Affinity, we're definitely going to want the 2 Nulls. We also want the Doomblade since it hits everything except for the Germ tokens, and maybe Disciple of the Vault, but it didn't look like they were running that version. In Agony Warp, this gets rid of the Frogmites, the Flayer Husk tokens. It also gets rid of the Somber Hoverguard. It's not very good against the 4/4s or against Atog, but it can't be great against everything, unfortunately. We're also going to bring in Excludes, because the creatures are the scariest things that they have. And get some additional value out of that. We're going to take out the Stormbound Geist, since it only blocks the Somber Hoverguard. 3 Disfigure, since the Agony Warps are basically just better versions. 1 Gush, because it's too slow, and 1 Deprive. We could potentially bring back in this Deprive over 1 Exclude, just because it's faster, and our opponent could have a fast start, and we might want to have a counterspell up on our second turn instead of our third. But we care enough more about their creatures than against their non-creatures that I'd rather have the version that draws a card. Lastly, I realized that this Edict is not very good against the Germ tokens, so I want to do one more switch and bring in the Deprive back. Okay, game 2. We would like to be on the play. We have 2 Evolving Wilds for lands. We have both of our Excludes. This is awkward, since we're going to be playing basically a turn behind our opponent by having all tap lands, and additionally having no removal. I think I'm going to go ahead and mulligan this hand. It's just too easy for it to go wrong. We just never draw any untapped lands, and we were too slow, and then we have no removal. We could get run over quite easily. Alright, this hand is definitely better. We get to start playing our Deprives. Gurmag Angler I do not want right now. Take off my upkeep stop in the meantime. Opponent does not have a turn 1 play. Alright, and we are now Brainstorm locked. We have no way to shuffle these around. So there's no real wrong way to put these cards back, except for perhaps hiding one of our islands. And now we just have to rely on these 4 counter spells to get us there, because we do not have a fast start in any way. Our opponent doesn't have a turn 1 or turn 2 play, which is good for us. Chromatic Star. I'm going to let that resolve. I'm only going to worry about... There we go. I can get rid of the Thoughtcast. Draw another land. Still looking for a black source. And we'll just see if counterspells for days can work. I'm going to use up these counterspells before my Deprives. Okay, I can Thought Scour on my turn if I like. I think I might as well go ahead and do that in case I find a land. Exclude. Well, that could be good. Atog. Well, I can't afford to let that resolve. If I had 2 removal spells in hand, I could potentially let it resolve, because I could Agony Warp it, force them to sacrifice something, and then kill it dead with something else, like an Edict or a Doomblade. Alright, I'm not going to ponder yet, because I would like to exclude if possible. Opponent is cracking the star, looking for something. And they let the mana go away. Brainstorm. Okay, that's something I can do on our opponent's end step if they just pass the turn again. Prism. They already have all their colors and mana anyway. Thoughtcast. Now here's the big question. Do I Thoughtcast this? Or do I deprive this? I think I do. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Our opponent does have enough important cards in their deck that them drawing 2 cards means that they're going to get ahead of us if I just try to 1-for-1 them with counterspells. Alright, our opponent uses their sideboarded Pyroblast to make their Thoughtcast resolve. They have a free Frogmite. And they pass. Alright, let's brainstorm and see what we can find. Alright, so we have a Delver that we could try to set up, since our opponent has such a slow start. And I think that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to put back Agony Warp and Island. Now Agony Warp is on top. The problem is now I don't have Exclude open if I try to play Delver of Secrets, plus Dismal Backwater. So what do I want to do? I think I'm going to do that anyway. This just works with our mana so much better, getting our Black Source actually online so we can play Scavenger later. And I'll take this opportunity since I don't have a lot of mana to ponder as well. Okay, so do I want this Deprive after the Agony Warp? I think the scariest thing our opponent can do this turn is play a 4-4, and our Agony Warp is not very good against that, and neither is this Deprive. So I think I'm going to order it. Well, I have to take 2 of them if I want to flip this Delver for sure. So I suppose I'll do it like this. This way I get to show my opponent I have an Agony Warp and not show them I have a Deprive in case that changes their plays. Not on this turn, but on their next turn. It is a little bit awkward drawing cards that I don't really want if our opponent plays a 4-4, when we're giving them free range to do exactly that right now. Alright, they blast away our thing anyway. Okay. So this actually works out fine for us. We get to resolve a Scavenger and have Deprive and Exclude up. Not both at the same time, but either or. Quite lucky that our opponent did not get to resolve an Atog or a Mirrored Forcer last turn. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. If our opponent follows up with Atog, obviously we'll be quite sad, but we also just can't afford to let our opponent run over us with 4-4s. They take the opportunity while we're tapped out to get rid of our Scavenger. And they pass the turn. Alright, we'll play this over the Dismal Backwater because it lets us thin our deck. We get to leave open both Warp and Deprive. Okay, crack this for a blue. I suppose I'm going to go ahead and warp this now. There's not many other targets we care about, since if we try to warp an Atog, they have plenty of things to sacrifice at this point. Mental Note. Let's go with the main phase Mental Note. And a Ponder as well. So, Agony Warp, Brainstorm, Thought Scour. Is this what we want to have? I suppose we can do it like this. Agony Warp, Brainstorm, Thought Scour. And then if we decide we don't want those other cards, we can always Thought Scour them off the top. Alright, do I want Agony Warp to Brainstorm at this point? I don't think that I do. I want to find hard counter magic and creatures. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pop up my graveyard to see what it is I've been milling this whole time. Um, Nothing too important, just some more card selection spells. Another main phase Scour. An Angler, perfect. So our opponent might have Journey to Nowhere they brought in to deal with this, but we have one counter spell. Alright. Just go ahead and do this for 2, I guess is fine. And see if our opponent can deal with it. If not, we get to kill in 4 turns. A Mirror Enforcer. I think I'm going to let one of those resolve. Our opponent can now block and then Galvanic Blast our Grimmack Angler, but we can counter that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to try to counter. This time I'm going to pick up the Dismal Backwater. I don't really care about having an untapped land since I have another one. And gaining 1 life might be relevant. Especially against a 4/4 creature. So if our opponent tries to race, we attack 4 times, they attack 4 times. Alright, but I'm going to start with Evolving Wilds. I actually need to check. We have 5 on the battlefield, 6, the 6th one in our hand. 7 is right here. Do we actually have another island? Yeah, we have 1 more island left in the deck. Now if our opponent has Galvanic Blast, that could change the clock and mean that we're not supposed to be racing here. Oh, we don't have an island left, but we do have a swamp, so at least we didn't whiff entirely. Ponder. Good draw. Preordain, Ponder, Mortuary Mire. Well, what do I have in my graveyard? I have a Scavenger, but no Angler. I think here I'm going to put the Ponder back on top and try to reponder. See one more card. We have plenty of mana to do this with. Counterspell. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Alright, so I'm going to put Mortuary Mire, Preordain, Counterspell, not Shuffle. And the next turn we get to Preordain. So now we're winning the race, especially after we had another Dismal Backwater here. So our opponent needs to kill us, needs to attack 4 times, or 2 more times now, and we only need to attack 2 more times, and we get to attack first. If our opponent does have multiple spells, like multiple Galvanic Blast, that could be a problem. Or if they have a Pyroblast for our counter spell. Let's see if we can find one more counter spell. Deprive, perfect. So because we have 2 counter spells, I don't really care about this Mortuary Mire to find another threat. I'd rather just keep on having counter spells for days. And I suppose I can play this island. I don't think it makes a difference either way. Okay, we're going to fall to 5. Our opponent's dead on board, and we have 2 counter spells. So unless they have 3 relevant spells, we're attacking for lethal now. So we'll start off with Deprive. Pick up a Dismal Backwater. Galvanic Blast. Targeting our face. So that's going to deal 4 damage. We're okay with that. Anything else we can counter? Presumably they have 1 more Galvanic Blast. They have a Fling. Okay, and we're going to counter that. And we get to win game 2. Excellent. So on the draw, I think I'm going to cut 1 Exclude for 1 Dispel. Just an additional out versus the Fling combo, and also it counters Galvanic Blast. And we'll do this. Alright, we're on the draw. We can go turn 1 Delver of Secrets, and then on our upkeep Brainstorm to flip it. And I like that play enough that I'm going to go ahead and do this. We need to find a black source very quickly. Oh look, there's a black source. Perfect. See if our opponent Galvanic Blasts this Delver, or if it actually gets to attack for some damage. I don't mind if they wasted Journey to Nowhere on it. A Frogmite for 2. Okay. In response, we're going to Brainstorm. And we don't want to see this scavenger for now. And which card do we want to show them? An Agony Warp, an Exclude, or a Dispel. I suppose we could show them an Agony Warp. Yes, I would like to reveal it. Now the next question is, what do I want to do for my land drop this turn? I could play a tap land, or I could play the swamp. I don't think I'm going to be rebuying the creature anytime soon, so I think I'll just play the tap land. Take our 2 from the Frogmite. If we can dodge a creature this turn that matters, then Exclude is going to be very good. But our opponent does have enough mana to play a Mirror Enforcer, or an Atog, or a Somber Hoverguard, so... Alright, there's an Atog. We can go ahead and take off our upkeep stop for now. So we could, right now, Agony Warp the Atog, but I don't think I'm going to do that. It would only force him to sacrifice either a Frogmite or a land. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's a little bit awkward, but I can't afford to just take damage from these creatures, because then it just puts us closer and closer in range of Atog killing us. So I'm going to give -3/-0 to the Atog and kill the Frogmite. Our opponent's going to sacrifice the Frogmite, but still deal us 0 damage this turn from the Atog. This gets an artifact off the field for Affinity and for the Atog sacrifice, and it just pads our life total a little bit. Buys us maybe 1 turn against the Fling combo. That could have also been a very important turn to be able to leave open Exclude, but I don't like letting our opponent just deal damage to us, and I don't think we can win a damage race right now. We can't fill up our graveyard fast enough to play both of these creatures. And our opponent just has 1 Galvanic Blast for our, or Pyroblast, it turns out, for our Insectile Aberration, then the clock becomes a lot worse. Okay. So we could play a Sultai Scavenger right now, and then not hold open anything, or we could hold open Exclude, Dispel, Agony Warp, but I think I prefer the latter more. Take a damage for this Atog. If our opponent doesn't do anything, we are going to Agony Warp it at the end of turn, most likely, just to make them sacrifice a land. Yep. So if they don't have any lands in hand, then making them sacrifice a land is probably a good thing. This also pads our graveyard for our Delve creatures. Alright, our opponent sacrifices their white land. And we draw a Deprive, which is quite bad. So now we can hold open, we can play Scavenger and hold open Dispel, or we can play Gurmag Angler. And it's a little bit awkward. I think I'm going to go with Angler. Oops, I forgot to re-click. Well, that was awkward. Now I don't get to hold open Dispel either. I guess the benefit of this is that I have a card in my graveyard, so I could eventually cast this Angler. The problem with Sultai Scavenger plus not holding up Dispel is it dies to a single Galvanic Blast as soon as our opponent has Metalcraft again. But if our opponent doesn't hit a land drop here, and doesn't play like a Star or Prism, I could just block this Atog, meaning they can't really attack because they can't afford to sacrifice another land right now. So yeah, what I wanted to do there was play Angler, because it would die to either 2 Galvanic Blast or 1 Journey to Nowhere if they top decked a white land exactly. Alright, so I am going to take our opponent off of a land here. I think that's worth it, since they missed a land drop last turn. Okay, Delver of Secrets. It's really, really awkward not having the double blue for Counterspell and Deprive. So do I play Delver or do I hold up Exclude plus Dispel? I do want to start pressuring our opponent's life total, but I also want to hold up in Counter Magic. What's our opponent most likely to play? They could have cast Frogmite in the past, so I don't think they have a Frogmite in hand. They could have cast Prisms or Stars or anything like that, so I don't think they have those. I think given that, it's unlikely that our opponent is going to play a creature next turn, The most likely play that they have is land plus like prism or star that they draw. Alright, so our opponent Galvanic blasts our creature. That's actually fine for us. Now if we draw an untapped land, or even an Evolving Wilds, we can play our Angler next turn. Our opponent finds another land. Let's see if they have a follow-up play. Another Atog. So it turns out maybe Exclude would have been good. Alright, there's an Angler that we cannot cast. Our opponent has had pretty bad draws this game, but to be fair, we've also had very bad draws. We're still on 3 lands as well. And we don't have double blue for our hard counter magic. There's a star. Can't do anything about that. Doomblade. Okay, I guess that's better than nothing. I can Doomblade plus Dispel. Alright, I think I'm going to take this opportunity to Doomblade. No, if I guess if our opponent goes land plus Mirror Enforcer, we would rather counter that. We can take 1 more damage. Springleaf Drum. That's fine. Alright, we take out one of the Atogs. We are getting into Fling range where we could die to Fling, unfortunately. So I could just main phase kill this Atog. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait. I have to spell up for Fling, so I don't think I can die to Fling this turn. Because I can Doomblade in response to one of the sacrifice activations to make them have 2 less power to work with. And then I can dispel the Fling, so they would need to have 3 mana, including a Fling and a Pyroblast. Plus, once again, this just lets me hold open Exclude, which I really want to resolve. Opponent cracks the star for green, so hopefully they're going to play a Carapace Forger. Beautiful. Lets us use our mana quite nicely. We draw a Deprive. Come on, blue source. A Null. Well, that's actually pretty interesting. So I'm going to kill this main phase and hold open a Null plus Dispel. If our opponent has exactly another Atog, that's a little bit awkward. Okay, I'm going to counter this because of Springleaf Drum. This gives our opponent access to green mana again for more Carapace Forgers, or blue mana for Thoughtcast and Summer Hoverguard, so I think this is pretty important to counter. Our opponent apparently has a Pyroblast, and they agree that the Husk is important enough to counter because it's important enough for them to save it. They don't have a Thoughtcast in hand, apparently. Okay, can I play 2 Anglers this turn? I have 10 mana, 11 mana if I crack this Evolving Wilds. So no, I cannot. So I think I'm going to play this, crack it for a blue, and hold open Angler plus Dispel. I could also not hold open Dispel and leave more cards in my graveyard for the second Angler. However, I want to be able to block this Germ token and not worry about getting Galvanic blasted. Alright, our opponent's on a 3-turn clock from this Gurmag Angler. And they Pyroblast our face. And we had accidentally F6, so we couldn't even counter it. Then again, I don't think we would counter it, because we'd rather counter the next one. Carapace Forger, okay. It's kind of awkward, since this means our opponent is now winning the damage race. Start off by attacking. Well, actually, I've got counter magic for days. I can probably wait, right? Yeah, I can wait. I'll wait till I have the second Angler down. If our opponent plays 2 relevant spells a turn with only 3 mana, then that's obviously bad for us since we can only counter 1 thing. But if one of them is an instant, then we're okay too. Alright, I believe that this is worth countering. Draws them deeper into the deck. Additionally fixes their mana, although they already have it partially fixed with the Springleaf Drum. Galvanic Blast targeting us. We will dispel that. Now we get to play a second Gurmag Angler and have Deprive open, so I think we're going to win this game. Ooh, and we'll also have a Null open. Yeah, this is great. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I was supposed to get rid of the Scavenger as well. So I only have one counter spell open, but I think that's going to be enough. Besides Mirror Enforcer, we don't really care about any artifacts or enchantments our opponent could play here anyway. I guess Journey to Nowhere would also be a little bit annoying. Mirror Enforcer. Okay. So we're going to deprive that, actually. I know we could also annul it, but I want to have deprive plus annul open next turn. And I'll pick up a swamp, I suppose. And our opponent must chump block now. Another deprive. And despite the misplay of F6ing through our turn when our opponent Galvanic blasted us, and also tapping incorrectly so we didn't have 2 counterspells open last turn, I think we're going to put this game away. Go ahead and annul that, just in case. And we win the match. Excellent. Alright, 2-0. We're going to try to play a little bit better in our following matches. And go to match 3.